Alright, so in the last video we talked about wisdom literature, and in this video we talk about the background of the New Testament. I'll talk about where most of it takes place and just a lot about what life was like during it, the people in it. First of all, the most recurring place is Palestine. It comes from Palestina, which means the land of the Philistines, the Jordan River, which connects the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea, Lake Gennesaret, which is just the Sea of Galilee. It's a very popular place for fishing. Therefore, many of Jesus' stories have to do with fish or just about being on the water. The Dead Sea has no life in it because it's too salty. The Mediterranean Sea is the major sea. It's also called the Great Sea. And then lastly there's Jerusalem, which is the mountainous city. On to occupations. This is important because many of Jesus' parables and stories have to do with these occupations. First, there are farmers who grew corn, barley, vines, or grapes for wine, olives, figs, and wheat. Then there were fishermen who mostly appeared at the Sea of Galilee. Then there were the shepherds, who were the outcasts or lowest class, far above slaves, and they were uneducated. Shepherds are the most important of the three because they were considered the lowly of society, and if you recall, Jesus came to raise up the lowly. On to the provinces, of which there was three. There was the north, which was Galilee, which was where the cities of Nazareth, Capernaum, and Cana were located. Then there was the center of Samaria, where Sychar was located. Lastly, the South Judea, Jericho, Jerusalem, Bethany, and Bethlehem were located. On to when this takes place, and more precisely when it started. The Emperor of Rome, during the beginning of the New Testament, or specifically Jesus' birth, is Caesar Octavius Augustus, and at his death, the Emperor is Tiberius. But Herod the Great, or Herod Antipater, was the ruler of Judea at Jesus' birth. Herod's kingdom was divided into 4 parts after his death. There was a ruler for each part who was called a tetrarch. The tetrarch of Judea was Herod Philip, the tetrarch of Galilee was Herod Antipas, and the tetrarchs of Samaria and Judea were Herod Archelaus and Pontius Pilate. The time or the year was based on the founding of Rome. Dionysius, not to be confused with the Greek god Dionysus, was a monk who calculated time, or he invented the Christian calendar, by basing it on Jesus' birth in relation to the founding of Rome. I don't know, it's kind of confusing, but his calculations were off by about 7 years. I don't know what calculations he made, or how he got a certain year based off Jesus' birth and the founding of Rome, but he did, and he was wrong. So Jesus wasn't actually born in the year 0, but in actually 7 BC. Jesus' ministry began in 28 AD. It lasted for about 2 to 3 years. Jesus died on 30 AD. A Jewish day lasts from sundown to sundown, so the Sabbath begins on sundown on Friday. Preparation day began on Friday evening. The hours of the day were as follows. The first was at 6 a.m., the third was at 9 a.m., the sixth was at 12 p.m. or noon, and the ninth was at 3 p.m. Next, I'll be talking about the different types of people at the time. In the overall aspect, Judaism refers to a people and a religion based on 1, monotheism, which is the belief and worship of only one true God. 2, following the law of Moses, which are the 10 Commandments. 3, the sign of consecration, which is circumcision. 4, the expectation of an afterlife, Messiah, a final judgment, stuff like that. 5, theocracy, so government of political and religious rule combined. And lastly, 6 or 7, the covenant, which is a unique relationship with their God. And now, on to the people. The Sadducees were a religious political group or sect of Judaism. They were mostly high priest families. They were rich and wealthy aristocrats. They accepted only the Pentateuch, the law, the book of Moses. They did not expect, need, or want a Messiah. They did not believe in the afterlife, judgment, resurrection, etc., and they collaborated with Rome until they accepted Roman rule. Next up are the Pharisees, who were a religious and political group of Judaism. It was the opposite of the Sadducees. They were members of the middle class, so merchants, fishermen, farmers, etc. They accepted the whole Old Testament. They expected a Messiah from the house of David, and they believed in an afterlife, judgment, whatever. They opposed Roman rule, but they were too legalistic, and they followed the letter of the law. And Jesus attacked their hypocrisy for that. The scribes were a religious subgroup or subsect of the Pharisees. They followed everything the Pharisees believed, since they were also Pharisees. They were the doctors of the law. They were experts on the law and scriptures. They studied, interpreted, revised, and created the laws. Next up are the Zealots, which were another political group or sect of Judaism. They strongly opposed Roman domination, presence, and rule. They were very militaristic, and they were nationalists. And at least 2 of Jesus' apostles were of this sect, Simon the Zealot and Judas Iscariot. Next are the Essenes, who were yet again another religious group or sect of Judaism. They were a monastic community. They were centered on work, prayer, and study of the law. They sought to remain pure, so they lived in communities away from society. Another group, which was small, were the high priests. They came from the tribe of Levi and were the highest power or rule in Judaism after Roman officials. During Jesus' life, Annas was the high priest, and then his son-in-law Caiaphas was. Lastly, there was a Sanhedrin, who was the supreme authority in Judaism under the high priests. They were an executive council of 71 members made up of three parties: the chief priests, who were the high priests and the head of the priestly families; the elders of the peoples, they were like the leaders of the aristocratic families; and then the scribes. The council had a wide range of powers granted them by Rome. They could pretty much do anything except one thing, and that was inflicting the death penalty on them. Now we move on to the description of the New Testament books. There are 27 of them. Evangel in Greek means good news, and an evangelist was a writer of the good news. The focuses of the New Testament are life, death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The main event in it is the resurrection. There is one gospel, but 4 accounts of it, 4 different portraits. They are not biographies. Now we move on to how the New Testament was, taught and written. First of all, the historical way was when Jesus was actually born, lived, preached, and died, so people had stuff to write down from that time. Second were the preachings after the resurrection and the Pentecost, when the disciples began preaching the good news, so people could write that stuff down too. Third was written, so when the good news was actually written down and people wrote it into books. What I mean when I say that is when it was actually written down, like they were primary sources, and then they were rewritten, the Bible. The first New Testament works are St. Paul's letters. The earliest gospel was written about 30 years after Jesus' death. The things that influenced what and why things were recorded or preached were force, impact, message, audience, reactions, etc. The 4 evangelists are the 4 writers of the gospel: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The synoptic means seen with the same eye and refers to 3 of the 4 gospels, which are similar in what is presented. The 3 synoptic gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. This concludes the New Testament background.